Hello, everybody. Here we are again. Another week has rolled by, and it's edition 215 of the Frank and Stan chat. And for those of you on video, you'll see that at the bottom of our screen, and hopefully yours as well, is Kerry Harrison. Hello, Kerry.
Hello, how are you?
Well, very well. Nice to catch up again. We'll sort of explain in a little while how I know Kerry and how some of the work she does links into some of Stan's schools that he supports. So anyway, how are you, Stan?
Okay. Late night last night,
Right.
so
I can hear it in the voice, Stan. It's a
yeah,
little croaky this morning,
yeah. I was talking till late last night.
but you were talking about education, I believe. So
I don't know if I'd call it education, but yeah, I was talking about schools.
or things that happen in schools. Yeah. Okay, Kerry, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to just introduce yourself? Because I know you're well known in Lancashire and there and surrounding authorities, but we go much wider than that. So, do you want to just explain who you are and what you do?
Hi, yeah. So I lead the Lancashire Digital Skills Partnership, which sits in the Lancashire Skills and Employment Hub. And this was a trailblazer. We originally set up with the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, as it was then, but now DCIT. And the idea is that we bring together public, private and charity sector organisations to address digital skills needs in Lancashire. And that could involve bringing in partners from, corporate partners from outside of the county. It could be working with people within the county, but looking at those needs. And we work across a strategic framework, which
That sounds really
has.
sort of business speak, a strategic framework.
Oh, I know but do you know what it is? It comes down to three themes. One is future workforce, which is the posh title, but ultimately it's about working with young people to ensure that they, from my point of view, understand that what digital careers could be, that they could be across different sectors, that they can happen in Lancashire, that they don't need to leave Lancashire, they don't need to necessarily leave their local town. And then the second one is working with businesses, so looking at their skills needs from a specialist skills point of view through to sort of the basic essential digital skills. Also looking a bit at quality, diversity and inclusion in terms of that and ensuring that we have a more inclusive, diverse tech workforce. And then the third one is around digital inclusion. So I do work around supporting people to have access to devices, have access to the internet and the skills to do that. So it's kind of it's quite a really wide remit, but leads to lots of sort of really interesting projects and working with lots of different organisations, which is good.
How long have you been doing that for?
It is 6.5 years now,
And
which is not
before
bad
that,
for a.
what were you doing before?
Yeah, before that. So before that, I was working in a college in Lancashire. So I was a curriculum manager. I looked after A levels and then moved into the sport department, looked after the BTEC provision and the HE provision as well. So I've kind of gone across all vocational A level. I didn't manage the apprenticeship program. I had a curriculum manager, but I did that. So I worked at Burnley College and spent, I don't know, about 6-7 years there. And then prior to that, I worked going backwards. Well, I have taught for around about 20 years. So I taught in high schools. I started as a PE teacher and then worked up to being an assistant head teacher in St Helens. I started in Lancashire, but then moved to a school in St Helens. So I had a taste of Merseyside. And then from there, I went into a school improvement team for St Helens Council and worked in that, did a lot of stuff around 14 to 19 curriculum and various different sort of policies that were coming out of government at the time before then moving in, back into teaching.
I always love these journeys. We get,
Yeah,
I started off as a PE teacher.
Yeah.
I saw one of your titles on your CV that said you were curricular and innovation. And it reminded me of my favourite title I had during one stage in my career, which was Curriculum Support and Innovation, CSI. I was CSI Charlie.
Well, my favourite job title is unfortunately not mine, is one at Lancaster University where it's the head of imagination. And I
Yeah.
just think that is just like the best job title of all times, and something I'd aspire to. But yeah, no, I've had a few, but yeah, curriculum development and innovation, and that was really interesting because it was bringing new curriculum policy into play, but actually making it real. So I spent a lot of time just sort of trying to translate, in essence, what's a piece of paper into something that looked real in the area and how it would work for our young people in the area, and bringing people on that journey with me to make sure that we could implement it in schools. So whether that was the head teachers and convincing them that this would be really beneficial to their young people, as well as the staff at the sort of lower rungs, if you like, who were going to be the people leading on this and delivering it and really making it happen. So I really enjoyed that role. It was a really great time in terms of things, and then had my own children and then moved back into teaching, which again was brilliant, really, to come back into Lancashire, working in East Lancashire, but just supporting young people during that journey. I really enjoyed being closer to the action as such, and actually delivering and making a difference in that way in that community. But yeah, it's been interesting, and now the job I have now, I kind of work across the whole of Lancashire, which I love, because I grew up in Lancashire, and I spent a lot of time working elsewhere, and to actually come back into Lancashire and do projects that are really making a difference in this county, really, I'm quite proud to do that.
Now, recently you've been involved in a big event, which I think from memory, which you mentioned just a little while ago before we started recording, 12,000?
Yeah, but just over 12,000. It might actually be higher, but so working with the Lancashire Cyber Partnership, so which was established around the whole investment of National Cyber Force coming to Lancashire and moving to Samlesbury, their headquarters to Samlesbury. And the partnership was set up around that with NCF, colleagues, with Lancashire University, UCLan University, and Lancashire County Council and BAE. And they that partnership, we work under, there's different working groups, and let's not get into the details, but we work under the People and Skills Group. And part of that, we decided as a partnership to run a festival, Lancashire Cyber Festival. And last year we ran it as a day. We had like 2 days, one for businesses, one for young people. And this year we decided to do an education week and try and spread it out across the whole of the county.
Right.
So literally in every district, in every part of Lancashire and every unitary authority, we had activity going on. So yeah, we had stuff with primary schools, working with Text You Can, BAE and STEM First also did some activities. We had one which was we've got a brilliant project called Cyber Fairy Tales, and STEM First and Helen Heggie run it, and it's based on Hansel and Gretel, and it's this space escape room in a box.
If nobody's seen that, I have to say I tried to adapt it, to be honest. I remember I was doing the work in Blackpool for an event, and it meant that I got really quite close to that material. I have to say, if you can get hold of that material, speak to Helen Heggie.
Yeah,
really, she's a force of nature, isn't she, Helen? So,
oh, indeed.
yeah.
You know, it's one of the best projects I think I've ever done, and the feedback every time young people do it, it's normally year 5, year 6, sort of, 9, 10, 11, that kind of age group. It is almost like they come out going, that's the best day of school I've ever had in my entire life. They will remember it for a long, long time. It really, really is impactful. But yeah, so we had young people doing that, and then we had colleges working with schools doing activities, and universities working with the colleges doing activities and running sessions. And we had a Cyber First mega event in Chorley, and we had some home educated students at Myerscough College. We had all sorts of amazing stuff going on during the week. Blackburn College finished the week with a community event where they were expecting about 200 people and got near 700-800 people and families coming through the actual event, which is fabulous. So a lot of raising awareness of careers, the skills you'll need, not just the technical skills, but looking at the wider piece.
Are we still in the? I mean, it's very naive of me to say this. I think I know the answer for ask it, but it's probably better to get it out there. Is the curriculum, and not specifically computing, but is it actually delivering the knowledge and skills that digital businesses are looking for? I suppose.
No, is the answer. Not at all. The latest Lloyd's Consumer Digital Index showed that 1 in 2 of our 18 to 25-year-olds cannot do all the essential digital skills for work, which is 20 tasks across a number of different sort of areas, from communication through to keeping yourself safe online. And 1 in 2 can't do that, can't do those skills. So
that's why when I speak to businesses, they say, well, it's young people aren't ready for the workplace, and I think it's such an own goal that we're
I agree.
continually going on about this, and we talk then about we need growth, we need to regenerate, we need businesses to come here, but actually, why would you? Why would you, when actually half your potential workforce don't know how to send, even some of them don't know how to send an email, have never sent an email.
Well, funnily enough, something I read this week was, I think it was a LinkedIn post that said, emails are dead. They are the same as memos for the current generation. Discuss, and you kind of think, kind of hope they're dead, because I hate email. But it's I spend hours with those things. However, they don't. And even a couple of things that I always get told by employers is one, they can't keep a file management system. It's all kind of just dumped into the downloads folder or just somewhere. It's not really like organized in any way. That's one thing that employers say. And then the other one is around using Excel and having the skills to use a spreadsheet. And that seems to be really lacking. And that came up in the LSIP, the Lancashire Skills Improvement Plan, when or the Local Skills Improvement Plan, when they did their research with the employers, it comes up, and it's one that's asked about all the time, the time.
Sorry, Stan, I'm sort of in on this.
No, it's all right.
It reminds me of the story I had when I was in the co-op headquarters, and we had work placements there from all of the academies, and there was a really when you see a young person, he was sort of like year 10, you could tell he wanted to make the best of this. He's good at maths, so he asked to go into the finance team, and so I always met the students midweek, and this kid was completely devastated. You could see that his shot, just his confidence had gone. And when we chatted about it, it was the fact that there was an assumption that the co-op staff had made, that because he was good at maths, that he was able to use Excel spreadsheets, and he had never. Well, he'd come across spreadsheets, but not the Excel spreadsheet. And so, in effect, there was an assumption from all the staff that he knew what he was doing, and he just sat there one afternoon, unable to do the task. And so he was then getting more and more anxious, he was saying, about having to feed back to the manager that actually, I can't do it. He couldn't admit he couldn't do it, And in a way, it's not his fault, is it? There's a very able, young man, wants to make the best of his life. And in a way, that school had failed him. The system had failed him.
Absolutely, and I don't think it would be that hard to bring in these skills into teaching and not to make teaching and learning more burdensome in that kind of way. I think it'd be quite easy to bring into geography, science, maths, all deal with large amounts of data or numbers. It wouldn't be that hard to have use of Excel as a kind of or a similar program, I guess. To upskill these young people, and to also see the crossover of some of these skills between subjects. That's always been a bit of a bugbear of me. A big bugbear of mine is that everybody teaches everything in isolation. I love it when primary schools do the projects, and they can do this whole kind of cross-curricular kind of look at things.
Kerry, now you're talking our language.
No, I
mean real life,
Yeah, real life.
What's happening in Ukraine without actually understanding its history, the geography, the wealth, the economics, all of that. You can't understand the situation. You can't understand what's happening without having a broad view of it.
No, I mean, when I first started teaching, I remember I was in a performing arts department at Haslingden High School, and we decided to do a cross-faculty project, and we did it around African dance because I could teach African dance, and so the art department did all about the art and history of art in that kind of area. Music did around that sort of theme, and they created the music that they danced to. I was using some African artists anyway as the kind of background, but they could use their own. They created these masks, and so by the end of it, they did some stuff in drama as well. And by the end of it, they had this whole kind of rounded understanding and appreciation of that part of African culture, and it was brilliant. And they took away from it much more than they did if we'd done it as individual little pieces. And I must admit, you talked about my job in St Helens innovation curriculum. Prior to leaving that, one of my movements was to try and look at cross-curricular projects for year 7. So a lot of the schools at the time were keeping them together a bit like primary schools and that kind of trying to aid transition and trying to look at, well, can we take the sectors of business, so take engineering or construction, do a project around that, which allows them to bring all the elements in of learning about that industry, but bring all the the geography, the English, the math sort of side things into it. And that's where I'd started moving down, but unfortunately changes in policy meant that we couldn't continue that work. But that's kind of where I was taking it, because I just think there's so much value in joining things up. And I get it why it doesn't happen. It's just, there's so much content to deliver. There is not enough time in the day to sort of have those creative things.
It's exams though, Kerry, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's what's driving it.
At the end of the day, what's driving it? It's like, making the sausages, we always think about, well, put some good ingredients in and take care over it. But actually, this is all about just the making. It's not about the making. It's about what does the sausage look like at the end.
Yeah.
The fact that you've I don't know. It's just, it feels to me as if it's all upside down.
I was going to say, many moons ago, I think any memories of it are now in sepia. But I worked with a group of secondary schools in Salford when I was a deputy in a primary school. And that's exactly what we did. With the secondary school responded to the primaries by saying, right, year 7 is going to be a different year altogether. We're reducing the number of teachers they're going to see. We're going to continue from the project that all the primary schools are going to do, and we're going to build on it in secondary, starting to divide the subjects up, but do it as a project. And all the children's work that they did in primary was on display when they got into secondary. It was all up to make them feel welcome and recognise their work.
And similarly, we were in Poynton. We used to do a bubbles project in year 7. So they started it in year 6. And guess what? They took all of their books up with them.
Oh, wow.
So actually the teachers in all the subjects, in the main subjects that were taught in primary, which were still being taught in secondary, the teachers could actually see what the work was like in July. That big drop off, which for some kids is really significant. You could see as clear as day what was going. I just cannot understand why that isn't just normal practice these days.
Well, as recent as 3 years ago, I was doing some work in Stoke where on maths, where the secondary teachers couldn't believe what was going on in the primaries.
Yeah.
Because they were saying, well, we do that in year 8. Well, they've already done it. They can already understand it. You don't need to do that.
My son says that. Yeah, my son started when he started secondary school, he's really good at maths. And he spent the first year of secondary school going, it is incredibly boring. I am not learning anything new. And math particularly was one where he was like, I'm doing stuff I've done years ago. And he was really frustrated by it. And he's, it's still happening right now. And he went through, it probably took till year 9 for him to kind of engage more with school again, because there was stuff happening.
Yeah.
What one high school did, which I thought was really innovative, was to look carefully at what the children did, SAT results, and what areas of maths they hadn't really, because it's SAT driven, shape and space has kind of disappeared off the curriculum. And so what they did was they focused on the areas that the children hadn't had in years 5 and 6 and built on those, which was great. It was really positive stuff.
I tend to manage the discussion. So there we've had 20 minutes about Kerry Harrison. It's drifted us off into various other areas, but thank you for that. We've got 10 minutes or so to do what caught our eye this week. So Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
Dead cats.
Yeah, and a table.
Yeah. Um, the theatre, I've been working where it came from. I knew the phrase to throw a dead cat on the table, which is to sort of I don't know, move the thinking around what might be not being done successfully and getting people to think about something different. And apparently, it was Boris Johnson's political strategist, a guy called Linton Crosby,
Oh yeah, yeah. No, he's
who
Australian, isn't he? Yeah,
Australian,
yeah,
who
yeah.
brought this from Australia. And the description is that, if you throw a dead cat onto a dining table, everybody's horrified, everybody's shocked, but the next conversations are all about the dead cat and not about whatever the conversation was before. And Boris
Mm.
Johnson describes it as when you're losing an argument, where the facts aren't supporting what you want to do, where it's inevitable that you're not going to be able to do, that's when you throw the dead cat in, and that disrupts everybody, and they start talking about something different, so you can sort your own problems out later. And I think we've had two in the last month or so from Ofsted. We've had the attendance from people whose parents work from home, which I find bizarre that's affecting children's attendance because the parents are at home working. And the second one, which was we need to look at the school holidays. And you
Mm.
just think that's one really nothing to do with Ofsted. I'm not sure where the evidence base would be to be able to make that comment. And everybody's looked at it, and everybody comes up with the same issue that economically you can't cut the summer holidays down to say 3 weeks, because that means everybody in the country wants to go on holiday abroad in the same 3 week period, and it's not doable.
Mm.
So it's a ridiculous argument to put in, and apparently we have the shortest summer holidays of most of Europe anyway. But it's there, and that's now being discussed as opposed to the scorecard, which appears to have gone down like a lead balloon
Yeah,
in most establishments.
we get the I newspaper. There is a double page spread today on basically. I suppose there are noises about Bridget Phillipson Post, and they're listing all the things that appear to have gone wrong or gone badly. But actually, the thing here on this, Stan, is just to stick on the holidays. I remember when I was in Blackpool, somebody came up to me, a shop owner, and said, I don't know where I'm supposed to take my holidays with my family. He said, I can't close during the summer holidays because that's the busiest time. I can't close during half terms because that's our busiest time. And I can't close at Christmas because that's our busiest time. So can someone tell me when I can go and have my holiday with my family without
Mm.
being fined or the children being sort of identified as non-attending? I
Oh,
thought,
and
you know,
Frank,
it's
I
just,
worked in East Lancashire when I started as a head there. There was still what were called wakes holidays,
Mm.
where factories would close down for a fortnight. And because I had staff whose husbands worked in Burnley, their holiday pattern was different, and so
Mm.
there was a fortnight, the only fortnight that they could go on holiday, and you just managed it.
mm,
It didn't cause
Mm.
school to drop off the edge of the cliff. It didn't stop children learning. We just managed that some children and a couple of teachers might not be in for a week or 2 weeks in that period because it was the only time. But it wasn't a catastrophe. Now it seems to be if a child's off for a day, the world falls apart.
mm, mm. Yeah, dead cat.
But throw a dead cat in because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
because
worked. We're not
yeah,
talking about scorecards.
no,
Indeed.
yeah. Kerry, what's caught your eye this week?
What caught my eye was an article I actually read this morning, which was around gene therapy for babies and very young children who have gone entirely blind, or their sight has deteriorated so quickly, and they've been injecting. It's a really rare disease that it's linked to, but they've been injecting in the correct genetic, not the defective one, and that's been working its magic. And these young people have
Wow.
been going from not even being able to see anything to being able to pick up toys and move toys around and actually interact with the world around them. So I just think that's quite amazing and a nice
Yeah.
little good news, good feeling story.
Also, there are those little videos on YouTube which are a joy to watch, aren't they? Where a child's vision isn't great, and then they put some glass, a
Yeah,
child about 2, and they put some glasses on the child, or
yeah,
it's a cochlear implant.
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
the curricular
And you
implant
think,
bed.
well, gosh, just the joy of this, things that we take for granted, in so many ways.
absolutely. Those
Yeah.
videos are cute, so cute, and they're struggling to put the glasses on, and the child's fighting away to go get. I'm not having these on my head, and then kind of suddenly stops and goes, "Oh, hang on a minute." Yeah, they're
Yeah,
really
if you want
cute.
an uplift, it's, yeah. What's caught my eye is, I'm just going to read it, uncontrolled leadership based on false promises. And basically, it's around the issues that are happening in America at the moment. And we, just feel as though this is where you could, well, because we always try and get it back to education, but it's like a pretty weak sort of trust board or governing body where they know that actually what's going on isn't quite right, but actually they haven't got it in them to actually tell the leader that it's not right. And it's that sort of the power, the governance issue again. And so, in effect, often, I mean, what's in my mind is a particular issue where I was asked to sort of look at is actually we've only taken one brave soul to have actually addressed the issue, because it was like a 6-5 split, whatever. It only needed one person to change their mind and to actually say something, but they didn't have it in them to offend the other people who were voting with them at that time. And you can see how this is being played out. This sort of the ego is stoked, and they always feel as though they're right. They then dig a hole for themselves. They then sort of lie in order to get out of the hole. And
Mm.
and often, I mean, you mentioned Boris Johnson there, Stan, didn't you? About well, when is a lie? Well, a lie is when it isn't truthful. I mean, it's as clear as that. And it feels to me as if we're in this sort of position again, and we
Yeah,
know.
but Frank, we accepted phrases like post-truth.
Yeah,
We're in a post-truth. And everybody, oh, right, oh, this is post-truth.
I
So,
know.
and these are alternative facts, and we just accepted them. We just, oh, yeah, right, we've got alternative facts. And we've
It
now
is.
got alternative facts about recent history.
Well, indeed. It is hard, though, if you're in the minority. I've sat in a senior management team where I was the only person willing to stand up and say, no, I disagree. And the others just were too scared to do so. And then there'd be phone calls afterwards going, oh, I can't believe you did that. Well done.
Well done.
Blah, blah, blah. And it's
Yeah.
like, you've got to come with me on this. You can't, I know that you all believe me. I know that I'm the voice of reason in this room and I'm saying it on behalf of everybody else, but you can't leave me there on my own. You've got to back me up.
Mm.
And it is really hard to
I,
challenge that person.
I don't often talk about our children here, and this is not related to anything that they're at the moment. But whenever they stand up for what they believe to be right in their work environment, I'm so proud of that. If I was your father, Kerry, I'd be so proud that you did that. Because actually, that's the only you're the only stop to this. And actually, when you walk away like there, you're probably thinking, well, we weren't able to change it, but do you know what? I've come away with my credibility intact, my professionalism intact, all of this sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
learned that at an earlier, and this is a really strange story, but I was working in a factory in Bury where my dad was, well, it was when I was 16, I think, as a holiday job. And there was this really horrible little boss who was intimidating everybody.
Mm.
And, at 16, I was frightened of him, the power he seemed to have on the factory
Mm.
floor. And one of the older guys drove a stacker truck, and he said, "Have you come across him yet?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, he's a nasty so and so." He said, "But have you seen your dad?" And I said, "Yeah." Why? He said, "Never bothers your dad, does he?" And I went, Well, no, I didn't really. No, you say it. No, he doesn't. He said, your dad won't put up with him. And they know that if they upset your dad, he'd walk
Mm.
and they need him. And I thought, wow, that's something about standing up. The only one on that particular factory floor who would just say, don't talk to me like that, go. And
Mm.
that taught me a lot. And when I was later in my career as a teacher, I was faced with somebody who was like that. I just said, no, I'm not having it.
Mm.
We're not playing that game. And it was a moment in time that taught me so much about how you deal with people.
That it's reminded me of the dynamics of leadership, really. That, and this is just off the top of my head, but it actually sort of made me think about how dangerous it is not to have a mix of experience and youth in your team.
Yeah.
It's not about it's not so much experience and youth. It's about ambition and stability. Having a good mix of ambitious people and people who have been with you for a while, but they've got a stable view of what the school is.
Mm.
That regular, if that becomes unbalanced, that you have either too much of the stable and not enough of the ambition, and similarly the other way around. I think you can end up in a situation where you could get a leader that is really favouring one side, and actually you just lose half your staff that way.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about that balance. So my chair of governors when I was ahead, the second headship, he said, and he was talking about experience here. You've got to be mindful of what they call incremental drift. So in education, you get an increment each year to a certain point, and he said that's great, but actually you can't end up with everybody on that incremental journey getting to the top there, not because of the pay, but because of something else. That the point he was making is that there is something to be said for the ambitious, perhaps naive person in the team. For future development and growth as well.
I
Well,
think you've also got to manage those people who are really good at the job and stable and don't see ambition as something, because you do need to say, you could get on and do
Yes.
more in another school. I remember having a chat with one teacher who later became a head teacher, a successful one. And when I said, it's time you started looking, and she said, why am I not doing a good job here?
mm.
Yeah, you are doing a good job here, which is why I think you should, for your own benefit, you should be looking to move on to get some more experience, and
I
otherwise you're going to be here at 60.
I'm going to leave Kerry in here because we've got a couple of minutes just before we finish. I don't know whether this relates to you, but I remember when staff used to come to me and they'd say female staff, and they would then say, I know what was coming. She would say, I'm pregnant. It's going to be a problem and I would be
Mm.
absolutely over the moon for them. Honestly, I would be. They were a bit shocked that I was over the moon for them because they knew it was going to cause a problem.
Mm.
But also the other conversation was where, like Stan was saying, you can see something in somebody. They've come back from having children. They're perhaps a couple of years back, and you can say, "Well, is it time now to move your career forward?" And they would say, "Oh, Frank, you don't really understand what's going on in my life at the moment. I'm trying to manage a 3 and 4 year old, and my husband's working full time. Actually, I can barely survive as I am. And I can really relate to that, both as a father and a husband, but also as a grandfather and seeing it with our own children. This isn't in many houses, certainly from my experience, it's not an equal share, in terms of what goes on in the house. And I think I'm much more mindful of what is possible, because I wouldn't want to tip anybody out, a female member of staff out, if that's because actually there isn't an equal balance in terms of their work-life arrangements with their partner.
I entirely get that. I know that when we had our children, it was a tough time because I got made redundant in the middle of that
Oh
because
wow!
from the council. So it was quite
Oh
a
gosh!
hard period. However, my husband is fabulous, but he worked shifts, so he'd work 12-hour shifts. So in that 12 hours, when it's a day shift, then all responsibility was on me. And likewise, on the night shift, he could do more, but it was still hard work. So it was really, it limited the distance I could travel to get to a school, because the schools start generally earlier than most nurseries, and nurseries start and then I need to drive. And so that was a limiting factor on the shifts. And I'll give you one example. I used to work for an exam board in the Educast exam board in Wales. So we used to have to go to being able to use Zoom and other sort of platforms. I had to go to Cardiff for meetings, and there was a day where they were like, "We need you down on this day," and I was like, "I can't do it. I can't physically get there for the whole day because of my husband's job and the kids and And they said, "Well, what could you do?" And so I had this mad day where I met my husband at 7:10 with the children at the train station, so he could pick the kids up from me. I got a train to Cardiff, which I've got to say from Preston is one of the most painful journeys ever and takes half of your lifetime. So it's about 4 hours. Got off at Cardiff, got in a taxi to the hotel, was there for like 3 hours of the kind of 6-hour day that everybody else was, then turned round, went back on the to the train station, back to the thing, met my husband at the train station with the children, and then he went to work and I went home. And you just kind of go, there is madness in that. So and I remember being in college, and I remember a distinct conversation with senior management about what my ambitions were for the future and what I wanted to do. And at that point, I was just totally like, yeah, surviving the day is a good one. And the other thing as well is when you're enjoying what you're doing, and then sometimes thinking about, well, leaving that and moving to something else is really heart-wrenching. And you just that kind of actually really love my job. I don't necessarily want to move to somewhere else because I really like where I am and what I'm doing, and I can see that I'm making a difference where you are, and I totally get it. I did that particularly in secondary schools. I kind of I started in my PE job, then I took on responsibilities, and I took on more and more responsibilities, and then you got to a point you were like, well, I either need to be a head of the department or I need to want to be like an assistant head of sixth form. You try and get those roles, and then you move and you kind of go on a bit of a conveyor belt of, right, well, I'll have to move schools now, and all that takes on board. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you're trying to balance it all and manage expectations.
The dog is telling us it's time to finish.
I know, sorry about that. My dog's decided someone's playing on the local park and that he's protecting his
We have reached the point where we normally stop anyway, so thank you, dog, for that. Thank you, Kerry, for joining us.
Thanks, Kerry.
It's been fascinating. I'd love to meet up again because I've really enjoyed the work we've done. But yeah, until we're back again, well, next week we have another Frankenstein chat, and actually we're recording today, this afternoon, a special World Book Day edition with Dan Worsley from Blackpool. I think the 4th time Dan's done this, so and it's very, very popular. So we get it out in advance so that teachers can view it, and then if they can't get an author, they can show the video. So we're recording that this afternoon, but we'll be back next week as well. Okay, so until then, thank you very much, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
See you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.